So if you're looking for answers for all of your trellis, moss pole, leaf spot, pest questions, this is the video for you. Let's dive into a Q&A from all of you, my lovely community. Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. As I said, this is going to be a Q&A video. Did I say FAQ in the beginning? If I did say FAQ. Brain is not braining today, it's way too hot, I'm going to get blown out, it's a bit much, thus sleevelessness. There's another reason for that and I will tell you in just a bit, but I asked all of you, both on my communities on YouTube and on Instagram, to send me some of your questions, whether they're plant related or not. And you did not disappoint. You sent me some amazing, amazing questions. So what I'll do is I will kind of talk you through some of my answers for the planty ones first. And there were a handful of ones that were not plant related, and I will leave those at the very end for the people that don't want to see them. They're going to be at the very end. Hopefully I'll have chapters on this video as well, so you can jump to a specific section if you want to. So I've got my handy dandy phone here because this is going to be, otherwise I'm not going to remember questions. First question is, how do you prevent spider mites? This person was saying that they keep attacking their alocasia and their pleomanii. Any tips would be helpful. So, biggest tip that I would have for that is, firstly, get used to it with your alocasias and the pleomanii. I will say those plants for me are always going to be spider mite magnets. It's just a part of life when you own them, is that you're going to be dealing with them. It's the same thing that it goes with calatheas. You will generally have to deal with spider mites at some point. However, let me give you a few options here. So depending on the alocasias that have got very, very thin leaves, I tend to find will always get spider mites a lot faster. So think about your alocasia odorata, for instance. But something like this, which has got slightly more textured leaves, and this is a dual alocasia, I think this is a sinuata, will not get spider mites as often because I would imagine it's not as easy for them to get through. However, if I hide my face, you might be able to see some white specks on these leaves. You then might get something like mealybugs for this. So it is swings and roundabouts. But one of my biggest suggestions for dealing with spider mites in those kind of plants specifically is prevention is key. And I've talked about this before, and let me show you one. Predatory insect satchels. So there is a couple of things that you could do, and this is what I would do here, is with satchels you can get different kind of elements to this as well. So this is the Ansomite Plus, which is a kind of all-in-one pest predator, and it will deal with spider mites, it will deal with early stage thrips, and a whole host of other things as well. This, for instance, might just be ones that are specifically predators for spider mites. Now, when I said prevention is key, because there are usually predatory insects that you can buy loose in usually some form of a little kind of loose substrate that you would sprinkle over your plant if you've got a heavy infestation. Now, what you can do that does work for some people, I've never found that those work, but using something like this and investing some tiny bit of money into things like this at the beginning of the growing season, possibly in the winter a few times as well, make sure that the predatory insects can survive in the slightly colder conditions of winter, because spider mites is one of those things that I find almost has more of an issue for me in the winter than it does the summer, because it's a drier condition. So that's another big tip. If you want to avoid that a bit more, if you can bump up the humidity around the plants, the spider mites don't tend to like super humid environments. I still get spider mites even in this environment and even when it's quite humid in here. I will say that I tend to get them more in the summer in this space because I have to open windows and the humidity levels aren't as high as they might be in the winter, for example. So that's another big thing. But getting something like this in advance of the growing season will help you, because even if that does start to happen, these things will kind of deal with it for you. However, you need to kind of get your head around some of these things because, as I drop it, because sometimes these predators, especially for spider mites, look like they could be mites themselves. So you need to be able to distinguish between the two, because You might go, oh my god, it didn't work, I want to use something else now, and I'm going to go into like spray with neem oil or all these things. And you're actually just getting rid of the predators, not the actual pests, and the pests have been killed by all the predators. So there's awareness. Do some research and hopefully that should help. The other thing, obviously, I was talking about sprays. I don't know if there's an awful lot of things that are systemic, and I don't think you need to with spider mites. They're not as bad as all that to need systemic sprays, because they cause a whole bunch of other issues. But something like a neem solution, I know some people don't like it, and you need to test it on your plants, and it doesn't do well on like the kind of more velvety plants. And the Plowmanii isn't velvety. I'm kind of looking at mine at the moment. Some of your allocations might be, so just bear that in mind. But you can spray it down like that. And actually one of the things that I found works really well for me, especially in the summer, just take it out, get a hose with a shower attachment and just spray it down. And if you do that a few times, it just knocks them off. And you can kind of keep on top of it. But the only true way that I have found to kind of almost guarantee that I never see them tends to be the satchels for me. Interestingly, the next question is linked to this as well. So the question was, do I still use bugs for pests? If so, how often do you use them, and do I use them proactively? Hopefully that initial answer kind of covered some of that as well. But yes, I still use them on a regular basis. I am not good with keeping things up. Give me a sec. So yes, I still use them very, very proactively, actually, more so, as I said, than treatment. So in the growing season, and before I used to just get away with maybe just buying them once in the growing season, but now I'm getting to the point now where I'll get them at the beginning of the growing season, once in the middle of the growing season, and once at the very end. And it tends to keep the pest pressures down for me. I swear by these things. And it just means a lot less work for me. And I've got this many plants. I know it might not look great, and I still think it looks horrendous when you've got things that look like little tea bags hanging off your plants. But the time that it saves me, the people that know, and they know how many things I need to deal with. If I had to spray down every single plant in here for pests on a regular basis in the summer, I don't think I'd ever sleep. So yes, I still use them. And the next question gets some show and tell. So this question is, let me kind of read what it says. What's my opinion on moss poles versus trellises versus support sticks, or versus nothing in terms of getting clumping and shorter internodal spaces in houseplants? Maybe specifically, I think they mentioned philodendrons. So for the people that might just be starting off, so you can get janky support sticks for the win. And I still grow a lot of my houseplants on just a support stick, tie it up, and you're good to go. This is the ultimate lazy man's kind of solution to keep things upright. I'll raise you things like a plank. So this is just, what's it called? It is a cork tile, sticky back tile, and I just kind of get a whole, I think 5 or 6 of them from Amazon that come in a pack, and I just cut them in the middle. And this can be used then as just a plank for plants to kind of grow up. Or you could go for moss poles, and you can get the standard moss poles that either you create and you've got all the moss exposed, or you can get the clear backed kind of D-shaped plastic moss poles. You can either create them, you can buy them ready these days. It's a whole host of different things. Trellises, I don't have anything on a trellis at the moment, but I have grown on a trellis, and I have grown things off a trellis. So loads of different things that you could use to grow your plants. So this is a good question, and it depends. It does really, really depend. So I find for me it's very plant specific. So the big plant that you can see behind me here, so this is an Anthurium esmeraldense, this is a Philodendron esmeraldense, and the newest leaf of the Philodendron esmeraldense, including this one here. None of that is just barely on a support stick and kind of attached to the shelving unit as well. This does not need anything like a moss pole. Something like this, for instance. So this is the Monstera esqueleto, and it's getting larger and sizing up quite nicely. This one does benefit from a moss pole. It doesn't necessarily need it. It will still grow, but you might not get the bigger and bigger leaves if you do not give it a moss pole to climb up. Then you get other plants, and I'm trying to think if I've got any plants that I can think of kind of 100% off the top of my head. I can't think of any right now, but there are certain things that are called obligate climbers, certain plants that are called obligate climbers. Those ones need to climb. What this might mean is sometimes it might be an obligate climber and it might just need a support stick. Some other obligate climbers will definitely need to put their roots into something in order for them to get bigger and shorter internodal spaces. I'll answer that part of the question first. Generally, yes, if you're giving it something like a moss pole or a plank, you will get shorter internodal spaces. And that, for the people that might not know, is the space between a petiole to the next petiole, and it's quite short. And you can kind of see here that had not attached to a moss pole, and you can see there's a bigger gap right there. So this section here, and there's a much smaller section there when it has attached. So yes, generally you will get shorter internodal spaces. If you let things without any form of support, coming into that part of the question, you will tend to get much longer internodal spaces. Let me see if I can bring something up to show you. It's massively intertwined. I'll see if I can put a picture or a video here of something that is growing on a longer internodal space. So I've got my Albo Syngonium variegata, and that is just trailing down instead of growing up anything, and the internodal spaces is about almost half the size of this entire janky support stick. So about that long between nodes. So yes, it does, if you let it kind of free grow, then that will kind of cause issues. It depends, and it's not just relevant to philodendrons as well. Like, you might be looking at a philodendron that it's an obligate climber and it needs to, but some of them, for instance, you might get some of the clumping philodendrons that tend to be kind of lower lying and they do not need a support stick. Don't give them one. At that point, they don't need it, they won't benefit from it. You might want to give them something like a janky support stick if they're feeling a bit wobbly, just to stabilize it, but it doesn't need it in order to grow up. But some philodendrons will, some philodendrons will not, and this doesn't just apply to philodendrons, it applies to most plants. It's probably not a full answer that you would need, where I can definitely say, you know, you need to do this and you need to do this. It's going to be plant specific. And the best suggestion that I would have there is, if you can't find any website that mentions exactly if you need to grow it on a moss pole or a stick or a trellis, just have a look online. I am sure on YouTube or Instagram, people are probably growing the plant that you're thinking of. See how they're growing it. Especially if you can get slightly more established plants from people that are growing it, see what they've done and start there, would be my suggestion. So the next question is a good one, actually. All of these are really good, but this one really stumped me a bit. So it says, does silica or CalMag, calcium and magnesium, are they really a must for plants? From what they can see from studies, they've seen that they're very similar to supplements in humans, so vitamins that we might all take, but they're not actually food. Have I tried them and what's my input on them? So, good question, very good question. So CalMag, interestingly enough, I have not tried it because, if I'm not mistaken, most of that is covered by my fertilizer, so with liquid gold leaf, that is within them as well. I don't think there is any, or if there isn't a lot of silica within liquid gold leaf. I can't remember. I'll correct myself if I'm wrong up the top there. But that one I have tried. I had tried a silica supplement for my plants for nearly 2 years. I never talked about it because it didn't get anywhere. So I'll try a lot of different things. I've got better at sharing with you both the successes and the failures, but that one was a long trial. It was nearly 2 years of me trying it with my plants. Did I see much of a difference? No. I did, however, use silica or silicon in my outdoor plants, and when I was growing stuff for the allotment, that had a great kind of success in terms of making the plants much more robust to stress. So, it depends. But yes, you are right in thinking that those kind of, essentially what they are trace elements. They're more like, correctly you said, they're more like supplements that we might take for vitamins and things like that, but they're not the main chemicals that the plant needs for growth, which is why a lot of the times, a lot of the feeds will focus on the NPK values, so nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, if I'm not mistaken, which are the things, the building blocks that the plants need. A lot of the times though, you will get some of these fertilizers, like I mentioned. I can talk about liquid gold leaf because that's one I've used for so long. They will have some of these other trace elements and minerals within that same mixture, and actually they do a lot of the heavy thinking for you. they kind of will have the right ratios or the best ratios that they can think of that will work well with their fertilizer. Because that's the other thing that a lot of people talk about, is sometimes it's the interaction of these chemical elements between themselves where, and I might be wrong with this one, I'm just going to try to think back on my chemistry years, too much of one thing might cause an issue with the other thing and vice versa. So a lot of the times I tend to not let it be with guesswork and just kind of use more of a complete fertilizer that has most of these things in, just purely because I don't want to think about it. I don't want to have all of that scientific thought behind it. And the average person doesn't care or probably doesn't know some of this as well, which is fine. But I'd say kind of trial it. I know, and hopefully I've encouraged you all. CalMag is something that a lot of people have used. Let us know, and let the person who was asking this question know down below if you've had any success and was it worth it for you. Another very appropriate question for today. Where is heat? Oh my God, this is so great that the sun is behind the clouds. And I know, we're finally getting a summer, but for when I'm filming, I would rather it be a bit more grey and dull. The question is, all of that to say, the question is, how do I handle the heat in the conservatory on the hottest days? Not well, is the answer, short answer, the long answer. I'll paint you a picture. So in the growing season, in here, all other things considered, I'd have to up my watering considerably. So in the winter, daily, all of these plants might take about an hour of watering because they're so infrequent. In the growing season, because it gets blasted by the sun, it's really, really warm, all of these things, my watering on the warmest of days might be 2 to 2.5 hours, possibly 3 hours, depending on how many things I need to water. In the morning, my day starts at 4:30 or 5 a.m. because dog, chicken, lizards, gardens, allotment, this, before. So like I'm usually done at least 6 hours of work before I start my work days. Oh, but yeah, it is one of those things that might be the watering, how long it takes me to water in the morning, but on the really hot days, I might then need to do an hour or two of watering in the evening. And a lot of this comes down to heat and sun. So part of that question, I'll expand a bit more, is what I do in order to minimize scorching, burning, all of these things in my plants within this space. So first thing is I was using the greenhouse paint on the glass. I've had issues trying to get it off from last year. I need to contact the company and just go, I've used every tip that you've had in your website of the kind of softer ways of getting rid of it. Some of it has not come off yet. Please give me the chemical solution to this at this point, because I cannot leave that on for years on end. At some point I'm going to sell this house. They don't need paint stuck onto windows. So that's one thing, but that kind of worked. Net curtains, which you might not be seeing, but they're behind you. The other thing that I found that has worked quite nicely this year is I found this sticky back plastic thing that you put on a window. Normally people would get the reflective one that kind of makes most windows into a two-way mirror. I tried that, but then I stopped doing it in this space because some people had kind of commented that if you've got decent double glazing, sometimes that reflecting of the heat gets trapped within that kind of double glazing and it could crack windows, possibly maybe the older double glazing windows. So I'm just a bit like, I don't want to crack my new windows and my new conservatories. I'm not doing that. But I did find film that's meant to be, so it kind of looks like it's been sandblasted. So think about the privacy windows that you might get in bathrooms where they still let the light in, but nobody, you and they and somebody else can't see inside or outside. But it still lets light in. That has been a game changer in here for this summer, and I'm so glad I found that. Had I have known about that, I probably wouldn't have bothered with the paint, because that's a lot easier to come on, to go on, and to then remove potentially, because I can just peel it off. So that's the other thing. I'm trying to think if there's anything else in here that's kind of worth noting. Fan, I've got the fan with the mister attachment because I have to open up the windows. Windows, a good thing. Ventilation is key in the summer, because if it isn't, it bakes. I've got a fan that's always running at the very top. I've got a fan that's oscillating around the space to get a breeze going in here. And for the windows and the door of the conservatory where it's open, I have put on the door I could only get like a bug screen, so there's a risk of kind of pests coming in from there. But on the windows, I listened to one of you lovely people who mentioned, was it pollen or allergen screens? And they're much, much smaller, which generally means that most pests won't come through it. Is it foolproof? No, but nothing is as foolproof as a closed window, but also a closed window in here just gets too hot. To give you some context, on some of the warmest days in here, I have seen this conservatory go up to 48 or 49 Celsius at some point during the day. Those days, even with all of these things, the humidity might drop down to 20, 30, 40%, which is very low for this space. I then have to start worrying about things like spider mites, which I generally don't have to because see earlier part of the video. But yeah, so that's the challenge. It's a challenge. It's one of those things that I would love to be able to just, and I don't know why I'd never thought about this. It wouldn't look great, and I probably wouldn't, my neighbors would hate me, but if I eventually move into the middle of nowhere, which is what I want to be at least a mile away from any neighbor in any direction. I've had enough of having neighbors now at this point. Ultimate millennial, where my midlife crisis is, you know what? Take away, like, technology from me, leave me somewhere in my like small holding with my chickens and everything else, and let me be. Peace and quiet sounds magical. But yes, it is one of those things that potentially something that I could have done. I don't know why I never thought about this in the previous years, is actually, this would have been a bit more involved by getting something like a shade cloth that they would use in the big greenhouses. This would not be a cheap solution, but actually almost tenting the whole thing, and that actually would have solved most of my problems. Because if I could get it over it, even if I had to use like 5 or 6 strips, and as I said, it wasn't going to be cheap, and it's not going to look nice either. That way I could kind of keep in all the heat, whilst me trying to put it in here, it just causes issues. But actually when it's on the outside, all I need to do in the winter is just remove it, and I'm back to kind of reset values. The next question is an interesting one, purely because I haven't. And the question is, have I tried Ruellia simplex, Mexican Petunia, as an indoor houseplant? And if yes, how was it? Do you have any tips? I haven't grown that in the house. I have grown regular petunias, I guess, as a houseplant. They tend to do okay. I found that maybe they were a bit more of a pest magnet to certain things, and I think it was more kind of things like aphids. But they can do okay. I'll flip the question over to some people that maybe have tried this, where there was a big push for certain new petunias, I think meant to be indoor houseplanty kind of things, the ones that would glow in the dark, which I don't think were really available in the UK, but they were very available in America. Those are very cool. Let me know how those went. But yeah, petunias, other than it wasn't particularly difficult, I can't think of anything else to tell you on that one. I didn't really struggle with it. Are you struggling with it? Has anybody else grown these types of petunias? Let the kind of questioner know down below. I'm really sorry. Hopefully, I was hoping to be able to answer that question a bit more than they should be okay, I guess, but I don't know. This is another interesting one. Fluval Stratum was a big thing for a minute, and now nobody talks about it. Was it just a trend? Did it not work? Now, oh no. Some people have kind of heard me say this on the video for a while, because I got given a bag of this a while back to trial, and the people that was kind of giving me the bag, the business, who were just like, we've kind of moved a lot of our plants in there, and they're all loving life. I never got around to it. I've still got the bag sitting there. And I think that possibly the reason why I haven't tried it is because it's not being talked about that much anymore. So to me, that might mean one of two things. Either it was a flash in the pan kind of trend that never really worked out as well. So maybe that's why people aren't talking about it. Or maybe it worked so well that people didn't feel the need to kind of update everybody and just go, yes, please keep doing this. But for me, I would lean towards the case of it wasn't worth the expense or the trouble of doing it. It didn't do much better than any other option would have done, I guess. I'm guessing here. I haven't done, to answer your question, I haven't tried it. But I know some of you have, and I might have triggered a few people with this because some people might have had good success with this. Do let us all know down below. I'm trying to remember back on older videos where I mentioned this, and there's usually at least one person that kind of comments, and I've had an equal mix of both good and bad. Some people kind of going, there's no point, it's not worth it. It's the same as pon, or it's the same, just use lava rock and it's the same thing. And other people that are just like, yes, I swear by it, this is great. But I can't remember now, but I think it's a mix. So yes, if anybody has used it, as I said, bad for me, I haven't used it. I think the bag is somewhere still down there, maybe. Is it? Yes, it's somewhere down there. Still haven't used it. Let me know if everybody comes back and says it's absolutely amazing, then I might actually finally trial it. So the next question is about orange leaf spot. And it's quite a long kind of question, so bear with me. So orange leaf spot, it can get all over daylilies in the garden. I don't have a garden. Inside I've got a Neomarica. Last summer I cut out the bad leaves. I don't get the leaves wet anymore. It's fine now, just dusty. Fair point, well made. So I ordered a Gloriosum online recently, which came with orange leaf spot. It has 2 new leaves that look healthy. I removed all 5 of the icky old leaves. Do I have experience with leaf spot? I don't. This person doesn't want leaf spot in their house. The Neomarica is a wonderful and beautiful plant that bugs generally won't touch, but the leaf spot was a shock last year. And now the same thing goes on the new Gloriosum. Also, they were asking if there's a difference between edema and gall on a calathea. I don't know what the gall is. I can tell you what an edema looks like, but let's take this from the very top. So orange leaf spot, as I understand it, is essentially what we would call leaf rust here. And it's a fungal issue with the plants. You did the right thing where it's kind of removing that constant moisture from the leaves. I would hazard a guess, I'll ask the question, did you used to have a very high humidity environment? Did you have a humidifier right next to it, or did you tend to spray your leaves down with kind of water quite often? Did that cause the issue? The other problem that it is, if it's fungal, it can pass on from plant to plant quite easily, especially if they're close to each other. So if there's a water droplet on that leaf and it touches the rust and it goes down and it hits another plant, that could potentially be carrying it there. I've never really experienced it, I don't think, in this space. I've experienced other issues, but not kind of the fungal rust on the leaves. So if anybody else has, and you want to give a bit more insight, do let them know down below, the person who asked that question. But as I said, for me, I would just kind of be very cognizant of moisture around the plants and kind of what plants might be around it so that it doesn't pass on. Just the fact that it came like that from a grower, it might just be that the grower, depending on if you bought it from a big store or a plant store and it came from a commercial grower, or if it came from an individual grower, whoever it might have been, their humidity levels might be out of whack. It might have also come from the plant shop, not from the growers originally. But yeah, it's unfortunate, it's annoying, but it is treatable. There are several different options of fungicides that you can get for plants. Always do a spot test if you're going to do something like that, because especially with something that might be a bit more velvety, like the Gloriosum, it might not like it. Now, coming on to the edema part of the question, I don't know what the gall is on a calathea. Maybe I'm just not reading that right. I don't know. But an edema is essentially burst plant cells because of the water absorption. There's a kind of an inconsistency in the watering, and the absorption of the water happens and they burst quite quickly. I'll see if I can get some images here of some of different ways that the edema can look like. One could just be that it's darker parts of the leaf and you can kind of see almost like the waters has burst in there. The other one, I've never been able to find a picture, and the one time that I had a good visual of it, I didn't take a picture, but just imagine something like a leaf, and imagine it having like a blister on top, so something like a cyst that you would get on somebody, where it's like a domed thing and there's liquid inside. That's another version of edema. That's usually how you can tell them, how they can tell that it's edema. I would imagine gall might look slightly differently, and maybe that's how you can tell the difference. Next question is a cute question. They were wondering if I've ever bought baby plants, e.g. Anthuriums. They're so exciting to watch and wait to see what they become. Yes, all the time. Even more so that I've got less space now, because baby plants, in my head, they will stay baby plants for a very long time. It doesn't. They still get big. Some of these things started off as baby plants, and baby plants no more. But I do have one to show you. So this is an allocation. Oh, I can never remember. This is the purpley one. I'll see about putting the name at the top there. This I bought as a baby plant. It's still doing quite well. This is the one that's slightly kind of veiny and purpley. But yes, baby plant. I had a bigger plant of this and it failed miserably, so I bought a baby plant to see if I can grow it better in my conditions from a smaller size. I also don't just buy baby plants. This is my begonia Amphioxus. It's looking very crusty at the moment, but this is only because this was in a prop box for a very, very long period of time, and I've taken it out and I'm trying to grow it out again. But this is what happens with Amphioxus when you bring it out from a terrarium, a super high humidity environment. It starts to look a bit crispy and then it will be fine. But yes, all the time. And yes, I do love to wait and see what they're going to turn into. Big, big excitement in my life. Other things might be kind of my own kind of Anthurium seed propagation, so creating seeds and pollinating Anthuriums and mixing and doing hybrids. These are always fun. These are the most exciting. I think you did mention, was it Anthuriums? Yes, e.g. Anthuriums, yes. Because Anthuriums can change a lot morphologically, and that's actually, I think that's more exciting, is when you get a plant that starts off one way and might end up looking an entirely different way, or if you do things like your own hybridization where you're just like, ooh, what's it gonna look like? Is it gonna look like parent A or parent B? So very, very cool, yes, all the time. Yay, and a gardening question, I love this. I'll keep it quick because I know that not everybody's into the gardening bits, but what's the best trick you can keep, that I do, to keep slugs and snails out of the vegetable gardens, or do I use different measures all at once? All different measures all at once. I'm pretty sure we do not have access to things like slug pellets in the UK for reasons. I will say when those were still available, they worked like a charm, but gone are those days. Probably for good reasons, I'm assuming, like it causes other issues, but they were very, very good when they were around. One thing that I've had great success with this year is slug nematodes. So the same way that you would get nematodes for the scariad flies or the fungus gnats, where it's basically like a little, like, think of tapeworm that kind of lives in the soil. It needs to go into water media. You need to keep on top of this, and it's not cheap, unfortunately, because I think people realize that it's one of the better ways of doing it, especially now that there's not any slug pellets. So, and they tend to go out of stock really, really quickly. But keeping on top of that, I think it needs to be done every 6 weeks, and watering a large area with that, and those little worms will sit there and eat all of the slugs for you. The other thing that I will tend to do is twofold. One, I'll have a sacrificial plant somewhere far away so that the slugs and snails will get attracted to that, and I don't care if they decimate it, away from my other plants that I do not want them touching. But at the same time as well, I think this is a trick that people have been using for years, is that kind of sunken cup in the soil level with beer. And you need to have a bit of a lid so it doesn't get a lot of water or debris going into it, and they'll get into the beer and they won't come out. Don't use expensive beer, obviously, just use the cheapest beer that you can get, but it does work really well, I've found. So yeah, combination of all of those two things. It's still not foolproof, because, and I would assume this person might be based in the UK this year, because we've had such a wet summer in the spring that slugs have decimated most things. But yes, those are the things that I do, and they work quite well in conjunction. Okay, another good one. The person starts off, I know that this is a basic question. There's no such thing as a basic question. Don't feel bad about asking anything. Just ask whatever you want. I know that this might be a basic question, but could you touch on 1, trellis, 2 or not, correct direction to trellis, clockwise or counterclockwise? That's an interesting question. 3, does misting Hoyas with Miracle-Gro plant food mist actually help? 4, my thoughts on pond. Now, those are quite a few questions there, but I'll do them rapid fire. Trellis or not? Yes, I find trellises can work quite well. Generally speaking, I'm assuming some of your questions might be related to Hoyas. For Hoyas, they work like a charm, basically. But just make sure that you're getting a bigger trellis than you think, or a trellis that you can extend, because they will outgrow that faster than you can possibly imagine. So that's the thing that I would say. Correct direction to trellis, clockwise or counterclockwise? I have never thought of that. I didn't know that there's a correct way to do it, counterclockwise or clockwise. For me, it's whichever way it goes. Oh, I don't know. Does anybody, is this a thing? I didn't know this was a thing. Is this a thing? Let us know down below. Is like, have I been like wrapping things around a trellis like the wrong way? I don't know. I don't know. It might. This is a good question. I don't know, but you have got me thinking now. I will have to look into this a bit more. And then the third part is, does misting Hoyas with Miracle-Gro Orchid plant food mist actually help? This I did try years ago. For me, no. No. It caused more issues. That's when I started getting the mealybugs on them. There was other fungal issues that were happening. It just didn't do enough for how much of a pain it was to do. It didn't do very much. Just patience with Hoyas is the best advice that I can give you. And my thoughts on pon. There's a whole host of things that I can say about pon, but because that's an entire video on its own, I will link you at the top there. I might even put them all in the same playlist so you can kind of have a look at them and link the playlist at the top. I've done a whole series of videos on pon, and I've also done updates throughout the years on my thoughts on pon and what I've learned along the way. So hopefully those videos, I always keep pointing the wrong way. New camera, it'll be somewhere at the top basically, and yeah, you can click on that and find out. I'll hopefully remember to put it down in the description as well. Another quick question is, have I found a solution for dragon scale edema? They have exactly the same issue. Short answer is no. However, this is my dragon scale. This was the first leaf that still had edema. This is the newest leaf that doesn't have edema, and this was the previous leaf that also does not have edema. So what I have done is, so try it, it's worth a trial. I don't know whether or not it's definitely this. I've used the Soil Ninjas Anthurium mix, so very, very, very coarse, and in a pot with a lot of holes, and I've moved it out of semi-hydro. And I know a lot of people, oh actually no, I lie, there's edema there. Ugh, bursting my bubble, but that is edema there. I don't know. Mine seems to have this issue all the time. I know there's a lot of people that said they had their own experiences. Let us all know down below. I don't know whether or not if I get a different one, it might not have the same issue. One thing I will say is when I had the silver version, not the green one, that one didn't suffer by the same issue quite as much. Next question is really cool. So my Anthurium insigne grows roots like a maniac, but no leaves. Why? So I don't know, I don't specifically have that Anthurium, but I have seen this done from other Anthuriums. It depends on the time of the year. So if it's not the growing season, that might be why. A lot of plants will lay down roots first before they push up any growth. But I have noticed this, my Philodendron Burley Marks variegata will do that. Some of my other Anthuriums will do the same thing. I think the Nigrolanium GG will do that. Like, it did nothing for nearly a year in terms of growth up top, but it was growing a whole bunch of roots. The moment that it hit critical mass is the moment it started growing leaves at the top. If you are in a hurry for that to happen and it hasn't been repotted recently, I would say repot it into a slightly tighter pot. And I find with those plants, usually if you constrict their roots a bit more, they're just like, oh, okay, we're full now, push up a leaf. Try that and see if that makes a difference. Aww. Thanks, Tanya. So no questions, just sending love. Love back to you too, Tanya. And then the other one is a two-part question. Do I know any good way to research what fertilizers work well for specific plants? Part one, not in terms of leaf fertilization, but micronutrients. This is a tricky one. Good question. This is a tricky one because no, is the simple, quick answer that I have. Do I have a good way of researching? Not to something that we'll be able to use, because a lot of the academic research that's done on there isn't done for us. It tends to be for larger scale growing, so kind of agricultural growing, and it's probably fertilizers that we're never going to have access to in our own little bubble of the world. The other element of kind of fertilizing is it depends, and you can go on anecdotal things in terms of what people experience, but I think you said they not in terms of leaf fertilization, but the micronutrients. Test it yourself a lot of the times, and the reality of a lot of us that do content out here, I have never got sponsored by Liquid Gold Leaf. I don't think, no. I've never got sponsored. I've only ever been sponsored for one video, I think. But so take that as you will, but a lot of people, when they're getting sponsored by some of these companies, yes, they are probably telling you their truest suggestion, but there might be some financial motivation there in order to do this. So see if you can find somebody who's kind of mentioned this and they've done some of their own testing where there isn't the financial motivation, and that might give you a better understanding, a truer understanding. And as I said, it's a murky one as well, because I would imagine everybody, they're giving their opinion is probably a true opinion, but it's tricky. There's not an awful lot of research. I can't just say, yes, definitely go and see and read this because this will give you the best indications. It's more of a see what other people have tested and seen, and you might not get, I would imagine you probably want a bit more of that kind of numbers element. You might not get that, but you can do your own experiment if you wanted to. Right, and coming into, I'm trying to see if I've got like not very much battery left. So hopefully this is not going to die on me, but let's do it in one go. So more personal questions, less planty related. Let's do quick fire on this one. So how do you have so many shirts and accessories? Love the channel and the planty goodness. Thank you so much. But so good question on the shirts and accessories. So shirts, in a different lifetime ago for me, when I was still a student, I actually ran my own business. I'm still kind of vaguely into fashion. I'm getting a bit older, so I wear things for comfort now rather than style. I also don't go out as much as I used to or go into offices, so I'm a bit more about the like post-COVID life. I just want to be a bit comfortable. You would have never have caught me dead in comfy tracksuit or athleisure type clothing before the pandemic happened. I'm just like, no, I have a lot of respect for myself. I want to be like all of these like wrong concepts. But yeah, I had my own business as an image consultant, as in like a bit of a stylist. So I would go with people to help them do shopping, because not everybody enjoys shopping for fashion, and kind of helping them decide of things that they feel comfortable in. Less so what looks good, but more what they would feel comfortable with, and maybe also challenging them a bit more. So let's put it this way, the biggest things every time I've moved house is all of my plants and my entire clothes and shoe collection. My movers hate me every time. They're just like, you've got all of this clothes and shoes, but you don't have enough storage space. I'm just like, no, story of my life. Story of my life. But I do anything that I'm not using anymore. I'll try to get into charities and things like that, or secondhand stores. And I try to be a bit more cognizant these days of not necessarily using fast fashion for everything, because of the consequences that it will have. In terms of accessories, I just like accessories as part of the fashion element. A lot of the earrings that you're seeing, some of them in the very beginning of my channel when you were seeing and people were always asking questions, I was buying, but then I was struggling to find stuff that I liked. So now I'm starting to make my own. So for the last year more or less, I've been making my own, and I've been really happy with them, and people seem to really like them. I'm not going to be selling them, I don't think, but it's more just because I was always the person who learned how to use a sewing machine and stuff like that, because I wanted to customize my clothes further and make them more me. So that's why I would create my own accessories. Hopefully that answers your question. And then there was a question about updates on Duke. Duke is doing well. It's interesting that this question came up today when I'm filming, because there's a plane. Hopefully you're not picking that up. Okay, it's passed. But it's Duke's second birthday tomorrow. So he is getting better. He's still a bit of a D-bag, but less and less every day, and the D-bag days are becoming less frequent, and it's nice now because there's the occasional semi-demi D-bag day and not just full D-bag days. But generally he is getting better. He's still a very happy chappy. He's my previous dog, and this is my kind of wish list before I got Duke, is that I wanted a dog that was super friendly because my old dog wasn't. I wanted a dog that was super sociable because my other dog wasn't. And a whole host of these things, that was very food motivated, that wanted to kind of walk because my other dog did not like particularly walking. And what they always say is be careful what you wish for, and I should have been more specific, because Duke, just to give you an understanding of kind of vibes, because he is a blonde kind of lab, the epitome of a himbo. Epitome of a himbo. There is nothing going on in that brain. Oh my god. I also think I've got a broken lab, because labs apparently, they are led by their gut. This dog enjoys food, but not like there's food usually left on the counters, nothing happens. He's picked up a new habit recently where unless I'm standing directly in front of him, he is so attached to me that he will leave his food and not go back and finish it. And it's like, dude, you are a lab. What are you doing moving away from the food? But yes, himbo. Himbo, there is like 2 brain cells at best in that brain. One is to remind him to breathe, and the other one is a bit like, But he is good and he's golden, and I am enjoying him a bit more now that he's a bit calmer, because the first 2 years or a year and a half it was a bit like, what did I do? And I think anybody who's got a lab or even a puppy generally will kind of sympathize. But yeah, hopefully like coming to the end of the adolescence days, so really, really well. I'll see if I can add a picture or a video here just to give you a bit more of an insight. And then I'll wrap up with a question that I've got over the recent months again and again and again, and it came up again, which is some people have noticed the new ink. And I wanted to kind of do a full reveal when it was finished, and it was finished. It's more or less healed now. So this is an entire sleeve with tropical houseplants. I got it done at True Love Tattoo in Norwich, and I will add the name at the top there, by Emma, and I will add links down below. Fantastic work. It can be really challenging to find decent tattooists for botanical tattoos. I've seen a lot of sketchy ones out there, but Emma is fantastic at what she does. So definitely check her out. But you should be able to see, and hopefully this will pick up, this is all kind of houseplants, and the kind of theory behind all of this was that these have all been plants that I have grown over the years, and it's a full sleeve, and you can kind of see it there, and I'll show you down the back as well. Let me know if you want me to give you better kind of close-ups on all of these, but hopefully you should be able to see. Now the question that I'll have for all of you is, can you name, kind of a bit of a challenge. Here's a bit of a challenge. Can you name every single plant that I've got on the sleeve? What I might do is I'll put it on the communities as well, on the communities tab, and get some images there. And yeah, let me know if you can guess all of the plants. At one point or another, I'm pretty sure every single one of these plants has been on my channel. And just in case anybody else asks about the other one, it's more of a nautical theme. So there's kind of a sugar skull, there's a sailor with an anchor, there's a compass point that's right there, there's a merman there, and there's different kind of beasts that are happening in there. I might need to get this was done from a different artist, I might need to get the backing on this done a bit more, because you can't really see, there's some meridian lines on there that I wanted like a map, and we've added some dark shading on it to just signify like older maps, but it's not reading that way, so I think I might need to go in and give it like a bit of yellowing, kind of like parchment papery. It's very difficult texture to do in a tattoo. But yes, I think that's everything, with literally 4% of battery left. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. Has been a relatively long video. That's fine, and that's annoying because I'm looking at the time now and it's probably going to be shy of an hour, and it's going to annoy me to death. But yes, hopefully you've enjoyed. Let me know if you want me to do another one of these sometime soon. Next week, I'm trying to see if I'm going to be able to bring out 2 videos. I'm really hoping the battery doesn't die. Hopefully be able to bring out a couple of videos as I would normally do, but I do have a very dear friend's wedding that I'm heading up to at the very end of the weekend. So I might not have time to film. I will try, however. But yes, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you all here soon, and I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.